just to recap, so we had this question of what is the reality of the young people, and then we found that reality is shaped or looks like a puzzle made up of all these themes in which we dance, we move, and we construct our identity. And now, when we move into, again, a universal aspect that is found not only across interviews, but also across themes, so it doesn't matter any longer whether we're talking about relationships or our profession or, yes, what was the other one? Education. It doesn't matter what was the theme. We found that there was this conscious becoming that we have titled, being experienced. And what does this mean? This is this conscious becoming is the knowledge or certainty that life is so beautiful, I love it so much, that life, that reality, and myself, the world and myself, are in constant change, development, movement. It's a dynamic experience that moves and changes and requires that I adapt, that I am flexible, that I can navigate. It's almost like one interviewee described it as there is the sea of life, there is the chaos of the ocean, and I have to be my own captain who is able not to calm the storm, but to drive that boat, no? or that ship that is my life. And this is really important for us to recognize, because I think from an anthroposophical perspective, this is how we tend to look at the human being, a human being in becoming. I mean, our last conference was based on this theme, no? But to see it so clearly in the words of young people who are not even connected to anthroposophy really gives us a sense of how current or pertinent this kind of research is, because it does resonate with the experience of reality. And maybe I can just give a few examples of how it appears, again, in the discourse, so that you see that it's not our projection and that it comes up. So we find this idea of becoming or movement, change, and development from the most trivial comments, such as, really, you're going to find out something about me when I tell you things, because I'm changing so much all the time that I don't think that you can really understand much of me. What I tell you today could change tomorrow. You know, that's how one interview begins, for example. And then we have really profound reflections that really show this, like the first quote here. I think I'm really conscious, she says, she's 21. I think I'm really conscious that a human being as a whole is developing, and always developing. When somebody does a mistake or something, it's not because he wants to do it. Maybe he doesn't know better. Maybe he's on the way to experience something. Yeah. This was also in that part of spontaneous discourse. So we can really see it in the discourse, you know, appearing very constantly. And then when, I didn't bring it today, but when we really look at it in connection to this experience of change and movement, is that which I already said. I need to learn to navigate, I need to be adaptable, I need to be mobile. Like, there is no other option. And even if the environment around me doesn't experience itself in becoming and in change, I am responsible for being adaptable, mobile, flexible. So it's not optional to not be responsible for my own becoming, my own state of becoming. So if the world wants me to do 9 till 5 and have these hours which don't go with my rhythm, with my way of being, then I cannot expect the environment to change for me. I have to take responsibility for taking care of myself. That was another quote. And that means, I think she said something like, that means that there is less time to do things, I have to be slower, I have to communicate more, I have to be honest with myself, and there has to be more communication about it, but it's not optional, I have to take care of that. And then we experienced, or we found in some discourses that when the environment is in becoming, so for example, I start working in a place where there is still possibility for change, like we said before, for making an impact, for shaping the way in which the place runs, then I find that not only this is a joyful and an enthusiastic experience, or I can unite my enthusiasm to it, but also it's the rightful way, it's the way to do things. It shouldn't be any other way. It should be a dialogue, it should be in movement, it should be in change, and I should be able to contribute to it. But this conscious becoming, I would say, and this is something perhaps to talk about later, for me this would be like with the profession vocation, that would be the biggest challenge, and I think this also brings a huge challenge. Like, one, how can we find stability, like something which is really truth, if everything is changing and in movement? And two, we know this, with so much choice and freedom and opportunity, how can I not get lost? So this idea of choice and freedom is as much a challenge as an opportunity, and how do we navigate there is a big question, I think. So with this idea of movement and development and changing, what we were able to see was, this is perhaps the most difficult part for me to explain, so I'm going to really try. We saw that we could identify 3 different moments in this changing, okay? And you have to imagine this as, I think, I cannot say for sure yet, but it's something that I think is in movement. You know, it's not static things, like you're in this moment and you stay in this moment forever or something like that. That's why I call them moments, moments of experience, perhaps. And this we take specifically from the moment in that interview line when we talk about the present. When people describe the present moment, we saw when we put them next to each other that you could kind of put them into little groups, if you wish. And I've given them these names for now and these images, but they could change in the future, and they are the moment of observing, of observation, the moment of developing or questioning, and the moment of doing. This is so obvious, no? But it's very important to see them. And this is important, I think, because when we are asking about what is the reality of the young person, and remember the original title, how do young people shape reality, there are different ways of participating with the world. And I think this is moments of participation. So when we talk about observing, we are talking about like this. I'm going to draw it because it's easier. This is not finished, okay? It's in development, in becoming. The moment of observing, which the image there is the balance, the scale, looks a bit like this. So here's I, and here's the world. And we are separated, and I am observing it, finding out what it has, kind of checking if it interests me or not, kind of feeling myself, seeing what I sense about the things that I can perceive. And it's kind of like this. I observe the world, and the world gives me things, sort of things. So in that quote, you can find that we don't read it in full, but it's something like this. I feel like I'm in a moment where I'm just waiting, when I am waiting for the world to change in such a way that then I can step in fully. You can read it later, maybe. So I feel like I'm observing, I feel like I am developing myself, looking at what's going on, and then eventually something is going to give, and then I will do what I am meant to do, because I believe that everyone is meant to do something here. Another option is I'm in a workplace. Another example, I am in my workplace, and I am here. I ended up here by luck, like by chance. I didn't really search for this job, but I've ended up here, and I'm seeing what my colleagues are doing, and I'm seeing how the things run, and I'm thinking what I could do, how I could change, what I could bring to it. But if the opportunity doesn't come, I'm okay. I can go somewhere else. So you see, it's still like a sense of distance. And then we go to this other moment, and it's kind of like this, no? It's like, I call them the developers or the questioners, because they are at a point where these young people define the present moment as I am shaping myself. I am a project was the other word. I am someone who is building, who is shaping, who has questions, who searches, who sometimes goes here and takes this, an explorer in a way still. And this is a very beautiful quote, I think, because she really describes herself with this beautiful image of being like something building out of clay. Whereas before there was only an empty table, now I can sense that there is like clay that needs to be shaped and is forming into someone, somebody, but I still don't know what shape I have. I just know that I am, what does she say? That's all I can say for my current state, that something is happening. You get the picture? And then we get to these doers, no? This is perhaps tough to differentiate, but these are people who, or the people who define this moment in the present moment in this way, are young people who are so active in generating reality, that is to say, in putting their will into the world and shaping it according to what they want to bring, or what they bring, full stop, that the present looks like a constant activity, you know, like the world around me is what I want it to be. The world is me. I am the world in as much as I am looking at it in my way, and I know that this is how I am shaping it, even just by looking at it. I draw it like, how did I draw it? Yes. I changed the drawing yesterday. It would be something like this. Before I used to do kind of like, I am in the world, you know, like I try to do things visually. So I'm searching for the right way of expressing this. But this is important because everything is moving, everything is changing. We might be in one moment and then in the next be in another. We don't know this because we haven't followed our subjects in a way that we could say this is it, like one step leads to another and so on. But for example, we have testimonies of young people who describe being here in the past and now are here. So maybe this would be an area to really check into, like what leads you to go from here to here, what qualities being here giving you for later perhaps doing something, who knows. And then because our question is reality of use and shaping reality, I sometimes look at it, these are questions of mine, okay? These are not results. I sometimes look at it like this. So if we had a scale of less shaping reality, and then that scale goes to more shaping, you could choose to say that the observers maybe are more here. It's not that they're not participating, of course, just by observing, you are already having an impact on what the world looks like, acts, and so on. It's not that they're not participating, it's that they're not molding, giving form, yes? Whereas these people could be here, and you could maybe say that this would then be in the middle, kind of mediating that experience. But what we've observed with this is so interesting, is that you can shape in different ways, you know? So you can shape, this is where I find it becomes like this. You can shape something completely new. What do we mean by new? Something that no matter how far back in your biography I look through what you've told me about you, I cannot see a pattern, you know? It's like you have done a change in something and you're no longer replicating something. Suddenly you have cut and something new, completely new has come. So this would be this newness, no? And then we can see a shaping, which is a continuation. So, for example, I have a talent for, and so my life is this stream of continuing this that I am able to, like something that comes from the past, from something learned or from something chosen in the past that I carry through. And the question for me would be, what happens that you break something new, and why do you continue certain things? That would be, so they're both very interesting, no? yeah, this would be continuation. And I think this is very nicely talked about in this young person that speaks here, because this is something linked to the future, the idea of the future. So are we going to shape the future according to continuation of things? If so, what things do we want to continue, what things we don't want to continue? And if we are going to bring new things, what needs to happen so that something new really comes to be? And this person says something which I think is very important. He says that, I feel like people my age, this was in the question of the generation, do you remember? How do you see the other young people? He said, I feel like people my age should start to think about their life more, rather than still following the footsteps of those who are older than them, what they've said and what they've built in the world. That already exists. The world we are experiencing right now is already the past, because it's built around the past. And if you think about the future, if you don't live in the present while thinking for the future, any creation is impossible, because you're going to be very influenced by this, the past. And the influence from the past is very strong. So if you don't create a space, yes, if young people don't create a space for questioning, for the inner spirituality, for the inner life, then the future is not going to be evolving healthily. It's amazing, I think. Yeah, I hope you can see this moment. This is for me one to really continue exploring, because it's not... Let me tell you why I think it's important, because it's not this... Now we're going to go into the gifts, yeah? People give gifts to the world for the future. Two young people could give me the same gift, but it's going to take a different shape depending on where I stand here, yeah? Here I'm going to wait, perhaps. Here I'm going to wait for it to come to me. Here I'm going to question it until I understand it to a point that then maybe I begin to observe it in places, or maybe I start to act it in the world. And here, where does my gift come from? Is it because I want it because it runs in me, or is it because I feel that this is a need, is something new? I don't know. Like, this is something to look at, I think. Is that clear, more or less? Okay, that was impossible to do in half an hour. Okay, yeah.
I have a tiny question about your why you split the new and continuation. I just don't understand why it's going down and up. Does it mean anything?
I mean, if I had done the thing like that, it would still be two ways.
Like this, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. In the horizon, it would be like that. Two ways of doing, shaping, building reality. But it's true that maybe the graph does, but that's a good point, because it looks like one is going down and one is going up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could change it upwards,
but I think. People who are observing will be down anyway.
That's why here, like yesterday, I was preparing the presentation, and here I was like, should I put them one after the other, or maybe just keep them mobile, because I cannot say that they are linear, that they are... Perhaps this is something to investigate more, but yeah. You want to say something? No. So yeah, the way in which we represent things as image is important. I think it also shows a lot of the person who's looking at it, the prejudice, doing something new, up, replicating down, Like, this is also something we observe when I observe myself, obviously, as the person who looks at the interviews. Anyway. Okay. Do you want to hear the gifts for the world? You know what? I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to put them on up, and you can start reading the highlights and then see what you find. just to say that what you see on the screen and on the paper are very condensed summaries of very long answers. So actually not always, but most of the time, these answers occupy 1 to 2 pages. But what I have done is to take very particular words or sentences that really condense it all to this. And I think actually we did an interesting experiment, Anna, Darin and I, the other day, which was to take all of these words and put them on a word cloud generator to see which one popped up more often. And we had love, because there is also them. We had love, and then understanding, transformation, knowledge, change. Yeah, it's really beautiful to bring but we felt the design was a bit cliche and we didn't like it and we took it away. So I can tell you instead. I think the highlight of these 20 gifts, because not all the interviews have been looked at, is the key aspect of understanding and knowledge and consciousness. It's amazing that we are not asking or wishing the world for something which is ready. It's something that requires activity. I think this is interesting. It's something that requires to engage and to search and to look and to understand and to gain knowledge about. This is an interesting gesture, and I think it's directly linked to the idea of becoming. If my world is changing and moving all the time, and I experience myself in that requires me to know constantly, to renew knowledge constantly, or to find knowledge that allows me to navigate all of that. No? And then, of course, I had to include these little gifts which don't appear so often. Health only once, and laughter, because, yes, because actually they are still linked to this understanding and knowledge, because the way in which he wishes health is not the suppression of illness, but actually balance. And the way laughter is wished for is knowing oneself and being this light that shines in all different aspects, and in this positive attitude that is able to look at everything with a joyful attitude, I think is very nice. Hope, authenticity, acceptance, this necessity to be oneself, to accept differences and to see beyond them is very clear. But I think for me, I stay with understanding, not because I like the word understanding, but it's because it's really said by everyone. And someone said understanding with capital U. So maybe you can live with this image in your heads. For this presentation, I haven't prepared really how we're going to do that. So these are only the gifts. The next question, if you will remember, would be, okay, how does the world change? And what am I going to do? But for now, I haven't brought this because I think to finish, what would be interesting would be to look at, okay, understand what? We started with a question. What are the questions that we are trying to understand? And here, perhaps, it's nice to see what these young people are concerning themselves with. And I have divided them into columns because, as you will see, there are somehow questions that are related to each other, but is something that perhaps would belong in this moment of questioning. Questions that I can ask myself, or that I can ask outside. So, who am I? Where do I come from? And what does it mean to be human? Are somehow related. But there are two different ways of formulating. So, one of our hypotheses when we were thinking about this, what makes you do something new, or what makes you continue something, we were thinking, or we observed, is funny because it might depend where young people ask that answers then are applied to action. So, for example, we observed that a lot of people, no, not a lot of people, sorry, because there's specifically one case, who are really in the mode of replication and continuation of something that works for them. This person had a lot of questions that needed to be answered by another, you know? He's searching for a mentor, for someone who gives him the answer so that he can do what he wants to do properly, you know? So he's searching out. And then here, we found a lot of people in this moment, and here as well, who are like, what do I need? What do I want? Who am I? You know, it's interesting that there are these two gestures of asking. Where are the questions being put might influence somehow. And then we can also see, what do I want and what is important to me? What is my task in this life? What is the meaning of life? And again, we were sort of putting them into groups in the sense of the nature of who we are, the nature of the human being, then our task, our mission, our vocation, profession, so on. And then we enter into the relationship realm or the social realm, and we have questions such as, how do people perceive me? What does friendship mean? Can I be truly interested? What does love mean? What can I do for others who have not had the same opportunities as me? What is good and what is bad? And then, am I going to meet others' expectations, and why should I? And where are my boundaries? What is freedom? So these are all taken from verbatims that hopefully, perhaps at some point we will publish. And so you can have the full access to exactly how the content was given and the depth and profoundness that one can find in them. And with that, maybe we can leave it for now and open up to our own questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Like, can you say again, how did you look to the question, who am I and what does it mean to be human? Because for me it was sounding that it was more from the frame of the social identity, different like profession, blah, 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 but actually, like, they are not. And
The ones at the top?
yeah, and how do you look at it, like, why? Because how I've heard that it's more from the social frame of the social identity that you looked at these questions.
No, not the top ones. The second ones. What is the meaning of life? What do I want? And what is important to me? I think that would belong if we were going to the action, not to the way in which we put our will in the world, which perhaps we could link it to the professional, but the who am I and what does it mean to be human? Is that the one you're asking about?
Yes.
Yeah. This belongs, I think, to the question of identity, of really, I don't even know how to describe this area. No? It's like the essence of who I am in humanity. Yeah. And then the other one was the social level, but this is, of course, so changing and shaping. But I wanted to give you a taste of how one question gives way to many others. And I think I used to say, perhaps these questions are, not perhaps, these questions are the questions of humanity, you know? And we have been asking them for centuries, millennia, probably. But maybe the most interesting thing is not the questions themselves, although of course that's what puts us in a common ground. And in one interview that was very beautiful to hear, how it's in the question that we really meet each other, because then the differences might be different. But perhaps the way in which we can really discern a generational impulse is in how we're answering them, you know? Because the questions have always been there, but how we're answering them is different, I think. And that's something to really closely look at. And maybe to close, I can remind those of you who were here of someone in Becoming Human. For those of you who weren't here, it's new, but someone who came to Becoming Human, and in this open space, I think she had such a beautiful and clear reflection, which was, we're thinking about what being human is and the future is and so on. And she said, could it be that what makes us really human is that we are asking questions? The act of questioning is what makes us truly human. And I think in that moment, everyone went like, So that's a bit of how far we've come with this. And yes, thank you so much for listening.